So, the Dutch Grand Prix is over and done with just like that. And, well, personally, I don't think anyone saw that coming. I think we thought it was going to be a close race, but wow, that was Max Verstappen-esque dominance from Lando Norris today, even with the poor start that he had, continuing, unfortunately, the unwanted record of 6 races now, or sprint and full races, where he's been on pole position and he hasn't led at the end of the first lap. But when you've got a car like that and you are calm, collected, you bide your time and you know you've got the machinery underneath you, you can put in a performance like that and win by 20 plus seconds. That is actually the first time in 2.5 years that a driver other than Max Verstappen has won a race by a margin of over 10 seconds. That is how dominant that Red Bull in Max Verstappen's hands has been over the previous 3 years. And well, today we saw a level of that performance from the McLaren and from Lando Norris. I think we expected it was going to be close, and the practice sessions and the qualifying in particular clearly indicated that McLaren were the team to beat. Similar type of level of performance that they had in Hungaroring a few races back, where of course Oscar won, and excluding the strategy issues that they had on the pit wall, they both just dominated that race and finished many seconds ahead of Max Verstappen in P5 and Lewis Hamilton, who came in third with a 15-second gap. So clearly the McLaren likes this type of circuits, but with upgrades for this weekend, they've clearly increased their performance relative to Red Bull at this type of circuit, because Red Bull, yeah, definitely not quite at the races this weekend. However, saying that, Max still got the car in second, and that is what the difference of a good quality driver can make when your car still isn't up to performance or up to scratch. You're still, at worst, bringing it home in second place. But anywho, let's get to our Q&A. I've asked for your guys' questions about the Dutch Grand Prix, so let's get to it. So our first question, or more so, this is a statement from Pex BD1003. They say, we might have been too harsh on Lando, calling him already worse than Oscar. So I don't think anyone's really been calling Lando worse than Oscar, or been calling Oscar worse than Lando. I think, yeah, I mean, while Oscar's had some great performances and clearly seems to be improving, especially with his tyre management, and he's had some great results this season and towards the end of the summer break, overall, I still don't think he's a better overall package than Lando. I did think and still think that even though Lando's won this race, that Oscar Piastri will finish ahead of Lando at the end of the season. It's a bold prediction after today, but I'm still sticking by that. I still am, because even though Oscar had a bad day today, and McLaren had clearly what looked like mechanical issues off the start line, because Oscar and Lando both had poor starts, and George Russell was able to get ahead of Oscar, which really was a detriment to his whole race. I do think come the end, I don't know, there's just a feeling that Oscar's still going to finish ahead of Lando. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he's better than Lando, and maybe this is the performance that Lando needed, even with that poor start, to kick on and put in a title challenge. But I don't think people are being particularly too harsh on Lando. There's always people who will, of course, go above and beyond and just be ridiculous in their statements and their criticism. But I always try to kind of say it how I see it. And look, you can't deny it. Even though Lando won today, he had a poor getaway, and thankfully he had a very dominant car this weekend. Yes, he did make the difference, and he was very patient and very mature in his response to losing P1 into the first corner. And he bided his time, and he was comfortably able to get past Max once Max's tyres started to drop off. And Lando, as he normally does in a first stint, if he's not in the lead or he's not in the position he needs to be, he just drops back a little bit out of the dirty air range, and then he goes on the attack at the end of a stint. But this was more so Max having issues with his tyres, and Lando just being patient and being ready to pounce, which was a very good tactic by him and executed well. But yeah, to say he's already worse than Oscar is a ridiculous statement, really. I don't think anyone's doubting that Lando isn't a better driver than Oscar at the moment, but that's not to say that Oscar still couldn't finish ahead of Lando by the end of the season, and that Oscar is improving. But of course, people in today's world are very quick to jump on any sportsman, not just F1, but any sportsman's back when they go for a bit of run of poor form or something. Of course, they're all high performing, but they're still human. They're going to make mistakes. And look, all you can do is learn from your mistakes and keep putting yourself in those positions to rectify them. And that's what Lando keeps doing. And yes, that unfortunate run of form of not leading at the end of the first lap whenever he's been on pole position is continued, but he's still putting himself in those positions. And next time, if he's on pole position, maybe McLaren won't actually have an issue with their race start, and maybe Lando will absolutely nail the start himself, and we will be saying, yep, he hasn't bottled the start and he's been fine. And he's got over that hurdle. And sticking with Lando Norris, there is a question from Levy the Gamer, which asks, do I think that Lando could potentially close the gap on the Drivers' Championship after what we've just witnessed? Well, he has just closed that gap. That gap to Max Verstappen is now down to 70 points. So that's under 3 race wins now. Of course, he got the fastest lap at the end, which we'll get onto very shortly. To gain that extra bonus points. So he got 26 points today rather than just 25. And every point against Max Verstappen is going to matter. I know I've stated that I still think Oscar can finish ahead of Lando by the end of the season. But look, today is about Lando, and that was a great drive from him. And if he does that, and he's got that mindset, he seemed to be very... He's obviously done some self-reflection over the summer break. Maybe it came at a good time for him. We know that this championship should be a lot closer now than it currently is. Lando even stated that in post-race interviews that, look, he's had a good car to win multiple races already this season, and it's mainly come down to his own error in regards to starts and qualifying or whatever that may be, which is why he hasn't won more races, and that championship fight isn't at least a bit closer than it currently is. But yeah, if he keeps this high level of performance we saw today, and of course a lot of it still rides on McLaren having this advantage that they currently have throughout the varying different types of track we've got in the remaining 9 races, then yes, he definitely can eat into that championship lead of Max Verstappen. And there's another question, of course, on Red Bull, because we can't neglect Red Bull, but there is a serious drop-off in performance there for whatever reason at the moment compared to McLaren. And could it be that those points, those difference in points in Hungary, will look back on that as potentially a big point in the season where Lando could lose a championship if this level of form continues? Because I mean, the way Red Bull have dropped off and that advantage that McLaren had today and how easily he got past Max Verstappen, I mean, you could see McLaren winning every single race between now and the end of the season. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, we saw Max win like 13, 14, 15 races in the last couple of years in a season, and that drive today and that gap to Max of 22 seconds, while I still think was overinflated a little bit due to Max knowing he had to just probably look after his tyres with the way the car was driving, and there's no point in him pushing when all he's going to do is just kill his tyres and try and maintain a gap of 10 seconds, and he's never going to end up catching Lando anyway. It was more about managing the gap between him and Charles. it was still a very big gap regardless. And if McLaren have that advantage going into the last 9 races, there's no reason why Lando can't win every single race and can't get every single fastest lap. Because to do that on 44 lap old hard tyres, as the Protonist asks, how did Norris get the fastest lap on 44 lap old hards? Is the McLaren dominant, or were the Mercedes weak on the softs, or what happened to the field? Thought Mercedes would be stronger. And it's a fair question, because Lewis Hamilton, prior to that last lap from Lando Norris, and it was only by a couple of hundredths of a second, but Lewis was on much fresher softs when he set the fastest lap. Now, of course, that means that he has more fuel in the car, so the car is heavier, and Lando has set that fastest lap when the car is at its lightest. But you would still say that the offset in the tyre usage in the hard compound tyre for 44 laps compared to soft tyres that have only done 15 to 20, which is what I think Lewis did when he set that fastest lap, even with the fuel difference, Lando shouldn't be able to set the fastest lap there. But that just indicates, one, that really there wasn't a lot of tyre deg this weekend at Zandvoort. The fact of that it was comfortably a one-stop race. I mean, Nico Hülkenberg took a set of hard compound tyres 57 laps and just finished outside the points. Unbelievable. I think multiple drivers, I mean, Lando there 44 laps on the whole, on hards, but multiple drivers took the hard tyre over more about 3/4 the race distance almost. So yeah, tyre deg was not really that high here, so that's why Lando was able to set a fast time on hard tyres, and that's also a clear indication, Proton, of how dominant and how powerful that McLaren was here at Zandvoort this weekend over the rest of the teams. It was just, yeah, utterly ridiculous. And that's kind of what we've seen from Red Bull in the past few years, and what we've seen from Mercedes as well in their dominant era, where they were able to set fastest laps on used tyres at the end of a race just because of how quick they were. The Mercs on the softs, I think the Mercedes just struggled here this weekend. Look, George Russell ate into his tyres. While I say, of course, that there wasn't a lot of tyre deg, well, George Russell, yes, he had a decent race in regards to in Spa. Of course, we know how that ended, and he was able to take those hard tyres to the end. But he does genuinely eat more into his tyres than Lewis Hamilton does, and a number of other drivers in and around the same position as him, and that was evident today. He, of course, pitted when he was in 5th position, I believe it was. Carlos Sainz just all of a sudden caught up to him. George Russell pitted, I think, just on around the 30 lap mark of usage on the hard compound tyre, and yeah, they just fell off an absolute cliff, and he was going to definitely lose that position to Carlos Sainz, and with how much time he was losing, he most likely would have lost a position to Sergio Perez as well, and ended up finishing where he was finishing on very, very dead tyres. And look, if there's a potential of a safety car, you're much better being on the soft compound tyre and having that extra grip if there is a race restart. So yeah, Mercedes, I think everyone thought they would be stronger. Look, Lewis Hamilton made some setup changes again on the Friday, as he likes to do. Says the car was in a good place on the Friday. I don't know if it's being led by Lewis or if it's being led by his engineering team. Whatever, they're looking at data and they're clearly translating it wrong. Because the car was in a decent position on the Friday, and then they changed it, and we all know how that played out in qualifying with him not making it through to Q3. So yeah, George did have the brand new floor on the Mercedes car, but even so, wasn't enough to catch up to Charles Leclerc, who he got undercut by, and to hold off Oscar Piastri when he had that tyre offset by going longer in the first stint. So yeah, Mercedes as well, they've got quite a narrow, still got a narrow margin in regards to like operating window, optimum operating window, if that makes sense. So they need particular set of conditions for their car to perform well. They need generally cooler conditions. Of course, you look at the races that they've won. Austria is an outlier because of the nature of that being handed to them. George Russell was still 15 seconds back when Max and Lando crashed. But if you look at Lewis's wins, he won, of course, Silverstone, which was interchangeable conditions. It was a lot cooler than it normally is at Silverstone. Of course, British weather, it can be very up and down. So that suited him, why he was very quick. And we always know Lewis excels in those interchangeable slick wet weather conditions. And then, of course, Spa, he managed absolutely brilliantly. Once again, Spa also slightly cooler conditions than what we usually expect. Rained, of course, on the Saturday for qualifying, and he managed that race absolutely brilliantly. And of course, George Russell was able to take those tyres as long as he was, and the car was pretty decent even on the one stop. We know that the reason why, of course, he ended up being underweight. But yeah, they need a particular set of conditions for that car to perform well, and I don't think they had that here this weekend. It was a lot windier also, so that possibly had an effect on their car and their setup and their aero package. So yeah, we'll see how they get on when we head to Monza, and how all the teams generally head to Monza, not just Mercedes, but Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, because that is also a bit of an outlier circuit, because it's the lowest downforce that we're going to have setup-wise throughout the course of the season. We always see those really cool skinny wings. It almost looks like that they've got no rear wing on their cars, because it's all about the top speed. So yeah, we'll see if McLaren dominance will carry over to that circuit. Will Red Bull be able to recuperate their loss of performance that they showed here this weekend, and likewise at a similar circuit like Hungaroring? Because let's move on to Red Bull, shall we? Because we can't skip by how much of a dramatic drop-off in performance the Red Bull has shown over the course of this season. Because we have not a question, but more so a statement by Jeffrey Bees. And he says, based on his analysis, RB, who I assume we mean Red Bull and not RB as in VCarb, on the way down, the Orange Army were a lot quieter than usual today. McLaren on the up. Well, yes, it did seem like, of course, that the Orange Army were a lot quieter. They've been used to that 100% record that Max Verstappen had at Zandvoort since its return to the calendar. And today, well, Max got absolutely blown apart by Lando. What's really interesting for me about Red Bull is not so much the general overall performance of Red Bull, but I think where Red Bull have been so dominant in the past is that, yes, we know they've made a quick car. We know that they've been quick in a straight line. Initially, it was that how quick they were with the DRS and how efficient the aero package was. But what's really intriguing to me, and look, you can put certain devices, secret devices aside, whether it's the concept that they've gone down, the route they've gone down with their aero this season to try and stay ahead of the pack, but they are eating tyres a lot more than they have ever done in this current regulation period. Where Red Bull's true advantage lied was they were able to manage their tyres so much better than everyone else. Like, there were times where Max could take a set of soft tyres an unbelievable distance and just continue to set ridiculous lap times on his tyres, and the car would just still have so much grip, so he could go faster for longer. And that's where the other teams really fell down, is that they just couldn't keep up with the pace that the Red Bull was setting, because they would eat their tyres. So they had to play a balancing act, and would just lose so much time to the Red Bull. That has now dissipated. Today is another clear evidence of that something is wrong with their car. We saw the understeer that Max was getting, particularly through the middle sector, the sliding across the track surface that the Red Bull has. And that is why he is eating into his tyres a lot more than particularly the McLaren, because all Norris had to do today after losing P1 at the start was just wait patiently in that 1 to 1.5 second range behind Max, let him know he's not going anywhere, and just wait for those tyres to go off. He could see Max would be particularly not hitting apexes. He would be able to see the understeer that Max was having, and he would definitely be able to know, I've just got to wait until his tyres fall away in this first stint and I'll pounce. And that's exactly what he did. And then as soon as Lando got into clean air, into the distance, see you later. And that's one of the key things that Red Bull are struggling with. Now, where is that originating from, this issue? It's the easy answer, of course, would be to say they've just got the wrong aero package. Their concepts, maybe it's to do with the suspension. As something they have changed on that car has caused them to have a dramatic change in performance. Now, of course, the cynical side of me will say it's a bit too coincidental that their drop-off has been so sudden. At the time when, of course, there was talks about regulation changes and clarifications to the regulations. And since Miami, well, I say after Miami, really, because Miami, Max obviously got damage, that was self-inflicted, but that was really the turning point of where McLaren were running similar pace to Red Bull. That's really when you look at the timing screens, you could see, they're not slower than Piastri. Max isn't pulling away from Piastri, and this is before he picked up the damage as well. And then since then, of course, Max has driven out of his skin and has managed to get some real good race wins, and McLaren haven't capitalised on that closing up of the performance. Should have won more races than they currently have. But I do think something has been altered in that car. This is pure speculation. There's nothing wrong with speculation. Anyone who has a disagreement with speculation, look, the whole sport, this is the most secretive sport in the world. Like, at the end of the day, we are always going to speculate, and especially when you have a governing body who are not open with the rulings and the decisions they make behind the scenes. There is history with the FIA of them telling teams to change parts on their car because they are not within the spirit of the regulations, or they have found loopholes, and then not disclose that to the public and to the media. And that's where the speculation arises, and the only way we find out is through leaks. So, of course, this is where this initial so-called the asymmetric braking assumption has come from, the clarification in that regulation. There's a number of reasons why that could have been clarified, why that's been clarified or altered, shall we say, to close off a loophole because someone's querying about a future design in asymmetric braking. Or it could be that, yes, they've discovered on a team that actually they're using a device that implements asymmetric braking. And look, you can look at all the theories online, of course, and make your own decisions. Of course, Red Bull fans and Red Bull spokespersons and people within the team, they're always going to deny. They're never going to come out and openly admit it. So I take their views as a pinch of salt, but then I also do take tech specialists and other journalists and stuff who aren't necessarily reputable as with a pinch of salt also. There has been a leak, of course, from a Spanish journalist / commentator who said he was informed by someone within the FIA that they've been told to alter a part or remove a part on their car. And that's kind of where this initially started from, until, of course, we got this clarification in the reg change. So, look, I think it's quite coincidental that they were so dominant at the start of the year, and I think it's a combination. Their drop-off in performance, I think, is a combination of them probably being told to alter something on their car that could be completely unrelated to that asymmetric braking, by the way. But alter something on their car, and McLaren have also made very big strides in their concept and their development. I think it's the combination of the two, which is why we have seen them basically get neck and neck, and at certain circuits McLaren now be the dominant car that we were so used to seeing Red Bull. So yeah, something, whether it be that change in the FIA or whether it be it's just going completely down the wrong concept and design route, something has fundamentally gone wrong with Red Bull that has allowed, in particular, McLaren to close up so dramatically. And I just think history shows that whenever there's been a dominant team and there's been always a big drop-off in performance like this to the next best team, history tells us that it's because of influence from the FIA telling a team to alter a part, or a part has been named illegal, and it's the other teams then are able to use said part and close up the gap. But yeah, considering of course what happened at the start of the season with how dominant they were, and now we look at them, it's bizarre, isn't it? It's very bizarre. But what this does do though for us fans, it gives us a great potential of a championship fight to the end of the season. Don't think any of us expected that. We didn't expect McLaren or any team to get close to the Red Bulls this year, but hey ho, we are now in a situation where we go into races, we don't know who's going to win, we don't know who's going to be on pole position because of the conditions. As you said, it could be Mercedes one week, it could be McLaren, it could be Red Bull. Hopefully, while it's great to see Lando win this race and to see him win it in such fashion, I do also hope it's not a regular thing. I don't want to go into every single race expecting Lando to win by 20 plus seconds. I don't want any team or any driver to do that. I don't mind it being the one-off race, but yeah, we want ultimately close racing and we want a close championship battle. And look, of course, I think people will want Lando to win it by this much each race, because it means we'll end up having a tight championship fight at the end. But it also doesn't then bode well going into the next year, where it's still the same regulation set, guys, and the roles are reversed and it's McLaren dominating in the same fashion that Red Bull did. So I want close racing. I want a close race weekends and a close championship fight from the outset. And yeah, hopefully this McLaren dominance doesn't continue. Now, moving away from McLaren, Red Bull, and the top teams in general, let's talk about Logan Sargeant, Logie Bear, in the Williams car. What is he doing? Honestly, FP3, if you guys didn't know, FP3 on the Saturday, he binned it again. Williams brought brand new parts to the car, a massive upgrade on both Albon and Logan Sargeant's car, and he set it alight. Literally, not figuratively, literally set that car alight, and he has only himself to blame. It was an inexcusable driving error in that wet weather session on Saturday morning. And well, he went through the bank corner of turn 3 on the exit. He kept his foot on the throttle while he ran onto the wet curbing into the wet grass on the right hand side, still kept his foot on the throttle. So there's only one result from that, and that is spinning the car over to the left hand side into the barrier. And well, yeah, I'm no doubt you've seen the images online. That car was absolutely destroyed, and he was unable to take part in qualifying. Now, it's a real shame, of course, that Alex Albon's car failed testing or post qualifying tests by the FIA, and that's why he was DQ'd, and he actually started a position down from his teammate. But of course, the class that is Alex Albon and the talent that he has over Logan Sargeant meant he still finished way ahead of him at the end of the race. But yeah, Logan, that whole crash was just inexcusable. It was just, yeah, poor driving error and just what we expect to see really from Logan Sargeant. Further comments from H Hall Racing asks, how did Sargeant not bin it? I know, Quite surprised actually that he didn't bin it in the race, but maybe he was under strict instruction that you definitely do not crash this car anymore. And well, Williams and James Vowles in particular, we know Logan's being replaced at the end of the season by Carlos Sainz, and that's going to be a great driver pairing. But I've stated a number of times, why have they not replaced Logan sooner? He's clearly not showing any improvements throughout the course of this season. He's always finishing 19th, 20th. He's had the odd near sniff at being closer to the points, but never anywhere close. All of their points come from Alex Albon, and even when he's been close a few times, finishing in P11 also, like, he's at least trying to get points. And it's a lot tougher now these days, of course, with how dominant the top 8 cars are in the top 4 teams. So sometimes there's only realistically 2 points, 2 places on offer, unless those top 8 cars kind of take each other out or they have mechanical issues. So it's slim pickings for sure at the bottom of the grid, and you can't afford to have someone like Logan Sargeant, who's one, not scoring points, but also costing you millions of pounds in damages. It's unbelievable how much money he has cost that team since he's been in F1, and it's now looking like that Williams are going to replace Logan Sargeant before the year is out and loan someone at their team. Now, it's been rumoured that Mick Schumacher might be going into that seat, or that Liam Lawson may be going into that seat. Now, you may be thinking, why those 2 drivers when they're not affiliated with Williams? Well, that's because Williams is the only team on the F1 grid that doesn't have a designated or assigned reserve driver. In the past, if they have required a reserve driver or a stand-in, they've used a Mercedes driver because of their connection with Mercedes and their engine. So that's why last time they needed a reserve driver, it was Nick De Vries who stepped in for Alex Albon when he had appendicitis at Monza. So yeah, Mick Schumacher, who F1 wise is still contracted in some manner, I believe, to Mercedes. Of course, he has a driver, Alpine, in their World Endurance and Hypercar series. So he is a potential driver, someone with, of course, F1 experience, or Liam Lawson might be loaned to Williams at the end of the season, previously linked to them before they confirmed the signature of Carlos Sainz as well. But James Vowles, I think, has always wanted his own driver lineup. He doesn't want to loan someone or someone he's going to have to give back in a year's time. That's why he refused Kimi Antonelli, supposedly. So yeah, Liam Lawson, I think, would be a great signing for them. Anyone else, give an F2 driver an opportunity, they would do a much better job than Logan Sargeant. Like, he is doing so bad. Like, what have you got to lose? Seriously. Like, you've got a known quantity. The reason Sargeant was kept on was because he was a known quantity. And they knew what they got from him, and they wanted to give him an opportunity to improve. And he just hasn't. Simple as. He's not good enough. His confidence is clearly shot, and he just probably doesn't care now either. You bring in someone like Liam Lawson, however, and even Mick Schumacher, those are 2 drivers who want to be in F1 still, and are still eyeing a seat up in F1. Of course, Liam Lawson, we know he's been promised a seat for 2025, but who knows with the merry-go-round that is Red Bull Racing. Of course, we all thought Perez was going to lose his seat. Hey-ho, he didn't. But Liam Lawson, get him in there. He's proven to be a decent quality driver in F1. Took his opportunity in the short period he had in the RB team. And, well, he would do a much better job than Logan Sargeant. And he has something to prove also. Mick Schumacher, I know people like Mick. I don't know. I still don't think I saw enough of him at Haas. That there's more that I saw of him at Haas than Logan Sargeant, but I still think Liam Lawson would be the better opportunity, and you're more likely to score points with Liam Lawson than you are with Logan Sargeant, and I think Mick Schumacher too. Now, we've just mentioned Liam Lawson, and let's stick with that theme of Liam Lawson, but not him in particular. Let's talk about VCarb, shall we? The team that we hope he will at least be in next year. May even be in the main Red Bull seat. Who knows? Topic of discussion for another day. But VCarb. I think I could do a better job at their strategy than whoever is running their strategy. I don't know who's doing it, but I could do a better job, and I think a number of you could as well, because what they did today with Yuki is inexcusable. Now, Yuki and Daniel have both been on the receiving end of very poor strategy calls by the team this season, and last season even, and today was just another notch on that belt for them, because they've just continued to make poor strategy decisions. Because Vom asks, does VCarb just flip a coin to see which driver they screw over with strategy every race? I think they do. Honestly, I think sometimes it's a double-sided coin, and they just pick both drivers. Sorry, double-sided coin's incorrect, isn't it? The coin lands on its side and they go, let's screw both of them over then. If it lands on its side. Because what are they doing? Yuki Tsunoda, he made some good ground up starting on the soft compound tyre. One of 3 drivers to do so, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas, and he was making good ground. He wasn't losing too much time to Lewis Hamilton ahead, who was charging through the field on that soft compound tyre. He made a pit stop on the 14th lap off the soft compound tyres, which you could say was arguably a little bit too early, but he went onto the medium compound tyre and he was going well. The middle stint was going very nicely on the medium compound tyre, and then they pitted him from P12 18 laps into the middle stint, and they pitted him back out in 19th position onto the hard compound tyre, which everyone was then pitting onto at the same time, and it was just, there was no logic behind the pit stop. He got brought into traffic as well, and it was just a complete throwaway of a position. But they've done numerous times this season, and I feel so sorry for Yuki. And look, we know Yuki is very quick to voice his thoughts and his emotions over the radio, but he looks so dejected at the end of the race. Not a word from him whatsoever. Daniel Ricciardo, I mean, he finished behind Daniel Ricciardo, and he outperformed Daniel Ricciardo all weekend. So really unfortunate for Yuki. He should have been fighting for the points, and he could have done so. The RB car, of course, it's a bit hit and miss. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. Obviously, it's not a consistent point scoring car, which I think more people, myself included, thought they would be at the start of the season, but it doesn't. I mean, they could have scored so many more points than they currently have if they had better strategy, because they're just throwing away points, absolutely throwing away points, and I don't get it. To pit him when they did 18 laps into it, it's like they just... I don't know. I really don't know what's going through their heads, but it's definitely a element of that team that needs to be overhauled, because it's been going on way too long. This is the norm for VCarb now, not not the irregular or the one-off occurrence. It's more so when they do a good strategy that we all clap our hands going, wow, you did a great strategy, well done, because that is the rare occasion, not the norm from them. So yeah, really feel sorry for Yuki. He got shafted today and ruined what was up until that point a good weekend. So he deserves so much more. He's going to be in that team, of course, next year, but I'd like to see him in a much better team, really, and a better car, because I think he deserves that. So yeah, a real shame for him. And lastly, our last question here by Ahmed. Apologies, not going to pronounce the rest of your username, so I'm calling you Ahmed there. Based on the current driver championship, who do you think could compete in 2025? He knows it's not related to this GP. Just wanted to know what I think. Well, look, I think based on today and the course of this season, the way it's progressed, I think McLaren are definitely going to be up there. I think Red Bull will recover in some respects. I think they're definitely going to get beaten to the constructors at the end of this year. But I still think we're going to see the usual suspects of McLaren, Red Bull fighting out for next year. I do think Mercedes will make improvements. I don't think with their driver pairing of George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, though, that they are going to be competing for the Drivers' Championship. Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc and Ferrari, well, how long's a piece of string? It all depends on Ferrari's development towards the end of this year. And yeah, if Ferrari generally, unless they hit the ground running, which they haven't done since, well, really 2007, which was the last time they won a Drivers' World Championship in Kimi Räikkönen, unless they hit the ground running and they have a really quick car out the box, their development overly isn't great. They need an advantage at the start of the season to be able to capitalize on throughout. But yeah, the development plan hasn't always been great. Who knows, maybe Fred Vasseur will change that, but this year they're reverting to type again because their development plan hasn't gone well. The big upgrades, or updates that they brought to Barcelona didn't have the performance gains that they wanted, and lost them grounds to the other teams. They supposedly have a big update package coming at Monza, as they always generally tend to do, because that's where they want to win most, of course, in front of the Tifosi, their home race. So we'll see. We'll see how the remaining 9 races are for them. Look, we know if they get given a good car, a race-winning car, Lewis Hamilton will have an opportunity at a World Drivers' Championship, as I do believe Charles Leclerc will. I think Charles Leclerc being with Lewis Hamilton next year, I think he'll learn a lot, and I think we'll see an evolution of Charles Leclerc next year by being Lewis's teammate, and it will improve him for the better. But yeah, it'd be great to see Ferrari have a championship competing car next year, but I do think it's going to be, as it looks at the moment, primarily McLaren and Red Bull. But who knows the position Red Bull are going to be in next year with their drop-off in performance, with how severe it's been. But look, still 9 races to the end of the season. We'll see how the development progresses, where the teams are come Abu Dhabi in the last race of the season. And that should really kind of give us a good indication of who are going to be the front running teams and drivers for next season, because there's not too much in change once again in the regulations, of course, until we head to 2026, when it's another complete overhaul. There we go, guys. That is the end of this Q&A. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us for our watch along as well after the summer break, the first race back. And yeah, it was good to see all you familiar faces. And if you're new to this channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. Turn those notifications on to be notified of when I go live. I go live for FP2, 3, and qualifying, and the race on Sunday. Unfortunately, FP1 is always primarily during my working day, which is why I'm not able to attend that practice session. But yes, we have a great community going on here. If you're a like-minded F1 fan and you want a great community to chat to, hit that like and subscribe button and join us for our next watch along when we head to Monza, the home circuit of the Ferrari team, who have got a lot of upgrades coming supposedly. They always like to put on a show, and we'll see if McLaren are able to continue and assert their dominance that they laid out here this weekend at Zandvoort. A very different circuit, all emphasis on the top speed, of course. Low downforce circuit. Will Red Bull be able to recover from the lack of performance they showed today? But still finishing second, though, and that could be key to Max Verstappen winning a 4th World Drivers' Championship if Lando and Oscar Piastri also are going to be sorting out those front row positions in the remaining 9 races. But yeah, it was an interesting race. I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10, to be honest with you. There was more overtaking. I didn't have high expectations for Zandvoort, and I think there was a lot more action than I expected there to be. But then it kind of fizzled out. I would say it felt like the race did drag on a little bit. But look, good to see once again another, well, Lando Norris's second win. It feels like another winner whenever Max Verstappen isn't winning. That's 5 races now, I think Max Verstappen has gone without winning a race in a row, and that's the longest run since before 2021. Will he be able to win another race before the end of the season? Let me know what you think in the comments below. A lot of you are, I'm seeing online, are thinking, where will Red Bull and Max Verstappen win another race before the year is out? A number of different varying circuits we're heading to that require different requirements of the performance of the car. Street circuits, Monza, low downforce circuit, and of course we've got some traditional circuits plonked in there as well, and still 3 sprint races to head our way. So plenty of points still on offer before the end of this season. But yeah, it's shaping up to be an exciting one. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you for the next one. Bye.